Welcome back, my bookish friends. Today we're joined by Bill Hulseman, author of Six to Carry the Casket and One to Say the Mass, a powerful reflection on faith, identity, and moving forward after loss. Bill's essays explore the ties of family and tradition, the struggle to belong, and the lifelong work of self discovery. He writes candidly about navigating faith as a gay man and the courage it takes to honor both truth and love in equal measure. What I find so inspiring about Bill is his ability to find meaning, even grace, in every experience. He has a rare gift of turning challenge into insight and grief into gratitude. In our conversation, we talk about how loss reshapes us, how faith can both hold and challenge us, and how writing has the power to heal. This is an honest conversation about growth, grief, and the beautiful mess of becoming ourselves. Let's get into it. Hi, Bill.
Hi, how's it going?
Doing good. Thanks for joining me.
I'm happy to be here.
Welcome to For Love of Memoir. We're here to talk about your book, which released in July, I believe.
Correct.
Six to Carry the Casket and One to Say the Mass. I love the title, by the way.
Thank you. Thanks.
So, for those that aren't familiar, usually I just kick it off by asking you to just maybe give us a summary of what it's about. It's a collection of essays, so kind of give us an idea of what it's about.
Yeah, Six to Carry the Casket and One to Say the Mass is a collection of essays about identity. It's divided in three parts. I call the first part Origins, and it's exploring, reflecting on a lot of my formative relationships and experiences as a kid, growing up, a family, religion, school, stuff like that. The second part I call Tradition. Uh, those are essays about sort of what I did with the identity that was given to me and some of the challenges that made me rethink or want to reshape myself or my engagement with the world. The third part is called Pride, and each essay, this part of the book originated a little bit differently. Um, each essay uplifts a person or a movie or a book or a TV show that was really important for me building my own queer identity. When the world didn't have any, I didn't see myself reflected in the world. But there were little things along the way that I started to see myself. And so the third part of the book is intended to celebrate and also unpack those things and how they impacted me, the seeds that they planted that continue to bloom. Uh,
Sort of like
yeah,
pop culture.
a lot of engagement with pop culture. I love popular culture. I love talking about it. I love paying attention to it. So a lot of essays about the Golden Girls, designing women. Of course, Madonna is on the list.
All
A couple of the
classics.
places that I stumbled into as a young person, where I felt suddenly, oh, this is my place. These are my people. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I found my tribe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's that's the third part of the book.
Cool. So, what made you decide on memoir to pull these essays together and deliver them as a book?
It's funny, I didn't think of it as a memoir going into it. I really just started writing to unpack my experiences. Um, I had landed in a place of real burnout and um, personal and professional. I had a lot, I was swimming in grief. Both of my
Mm.
parents and one of my siblings died within 18 months of each other. I was doing the hardest job I'd ever done, and I completely burned out. And so I wanted to understand, how did I land in this place of burnout? In that time, I stepped away from my work in education in schools, and I took time to heal and figure stuff out and figure out what I wanted to do next. Um, and that's when I started writing. And of course, I started writing to understand how I landed there. And then 2020 happened, and we
Mm.
all landed in a place of burnout, physically, socially, politically,
Mm.
and we're still living through that fallout.
Yeah.
But so I wanted to understand how I landed there, and then how we all landed there. Uh, I chose personal essays because that was the most natural way for me to write. Yeah, as a
Mhm.
student, I love being a student. I've been to grad school twice. I've done multiple rounds of it. I'd be a professional graduate student if I could. But short, pithy essays give me the space to unpack things. So it was the
Mhm.
most familiar and most effective form for me. Uh, but yeah, I didn't think about it as a memoir. I was thinking about it personal essays, but I wanted to explore ideas, explore both memories and experiences I had had, but also ideas that I was playing with and things I wanted to respond to things that were happening in the world.
Mm.
It wasn't until a few friends reflected back to me that they thought, you should write a book. Uh, oh, okay. Well, maybe. I don't know. If one friend says that, isn't that lovely? That's very nice of you to say. The second friend who said that, it was like, oh, okay, that's two people who have suggested it.
Mhm.
And then when the third friend said, have you thought about putting these in a book? I thought, well, isn't that interesting? And when I stepped back and I saw the through line about identity, and I saw that it did become a memoir in a way. I don't think of it as a memoir because I don't think my life is interesting enough to deserve a memoir per se, but uh, but it is a memoir because it's looking at my past, looking at my experiences, understanding how I got here and how that sets me up for moving forward and life in the
Mm.
future.
Mm.
So the short answer, it's the most familiar way for me to write. I'm not a
Sure.
fiction writer. I'm not, the biographical details of my life. You didn't need that chronology.
Yeah.
But I wanted to unpack those moments, those key moments that shaped me.
Yeah. And two, I think people overestimate what memoir really is. I think maybe
Mm,
because there's so many celebrities that have them out there, right? That have like these big grandiose lives. But kind of to your point, when you were growing up, you didn't really have there was really nothing out there for you to relate to in terms of
mm,
like literature and stories and memoirs. So I think people underestimate the value of their experiences and how somebody somewhere, likely several somebodies,
mm.
are going to relate. They're going to relate to what they're going to see themselves in your story. So that's why I think it's the human story is so incredibly important. That's why I do
Mm.
the show, and that's why I am so passionate about memoir in general. So
Amen.
it sounds like then maybe you kind of started writing these essays over the course of time. And it wasn't until you had a few friends recommend that you put them in the book that you really kind of started to put your nose to the grindstone to pull out more.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it was over the course of about 2 years that I was writing, and I was putting these essays into a newsletter. That was especially in 2020 and 2021, when we're still so removed from our day-to-day relationships and lives. It was a way to connect with people. So I wanted to share these essays. I wanted people to respond. I wanted to have some dialogue about it because
Mm.
I was really moved early in the pandemic by an essay that Arundhati Roy wrote. She's the
Hmm.
author of The God of Small Things
Okay.
and some other books. Um, she wrote an essay called The Pandemic is a Portal. And this was in April 2020. So this was, before most American cities were shut down. Seattle was already shut down by that point. But she looked historically at what happened when a pandemic hit the world. And she saw it, yes, as a great tragedy, but also there's an opportunity to rebuild. This is the chance to figure out there's going to be life on the other side of the pandemic.
Hmm.
So we're going to get through it. Now we have the choice to drag, and she writes it so beautifully, drag our dead carcasses and our smoke-filled skies and our dead rivers. And we can drag all that with us, or we could walk through and make a fresh start and and
Mm.
recreate the world in the way that we know we should.
Mm.
I took that, I really took that to heart. It wasn't just the opportunity for us as a society to redesign or as a species to
Hmm.
rethink how we're moving through the world, but I took that very personally. Like, okay, this is an opportunity not just to sit still and try not to get sick. This is the opportunity to rethink,
Yeah.
to redesign myself and redesign my life. And so tried my best to take that opportunity and to do something with it. I really
Mm,
rebuilt myself. I really redesigned myself. It made that period of quarantine, that period of the pandemic, and all that fear and all that anxiety. Uh, it helped me tunnel vision through that. I could
mm,
focus on, okay, I'm building a new life. My husband and I had just gotten married right before the pandemic. We're building a new home together. We're building a new life together. We're going to focus on this. And
mm.
terrible stuff is going to keep happening, but we're going to keep building towards something new, something else, and something better that we can do. But that started with
Yeah,
us. It starts with our own changes. If we want society to change, we have to make choices in ourselves. We have to make those discrete
absolutely.
changes. We can't just let everything else change and
Yeah.
remain on our, keep coasting on our track.
Yeah. And it's been my experience too that opportunity often comes disguised as challenge, right?
Mm.
So it's all a matter of how you navigate that and what you choose to do with it, to your point. And I've talked to a lot of authors who started writing their memoirs during COVID. I mean, what else was there to do?
Yeah,
We could sit
exactly.
and doom scroll the internet, and plenty of us did that for sure, right?
Yeah.
Or we can use that time to kind of go within and help ourselves transform. And that's something that writing is always capable of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can we talk about your fabulous title?
Sure.
Where did it come from?
The title, Six to Carry the Casket and One to Say the Mass.
Hmm.
It just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? It's so easy to say. Uh, I take the title from an essay of the same title in the book, and that essay is about my mom and my relationship with my mom. The
Mm.
phrase is something that she used to say all the time. So let me explain. So she's a good Irish Catholic, had a very Irish sense of humor, very witty, but I like to joke that she was good at preparing us for her death from the moment we were born. Things like if we ever gave her a gift, uh, she'd say, "Oh, thank you." By the time she was done saying thank you, she already had a Sharpie in her hand and was writing your name on the bottom. I have an example. Okay, so I gave her this. It must have been like 12 or 14, and there's my name on the bottom of it. Can you
Oh
see?
my
Yeah.
goodness.
So, and if anybody asked her about that, she'd say, "Well, I don't want kids fighting about things when I die." And it's like, "Happy birthday, Mom, but thank you for reminding us of your funeral that's impending." So, that was just her wit, her sense of humor, and my husband thinks it's very morbid, but my whole family makes jokes like that. Like, "Oh, I want that at my funeral. Oh, I want, say that to me after I'm dead." That things like that. Uh, one of the things that people would say, when they found out that she had so many children, they'd be like, "Oh my God, you have so many children. And how many boys, how many girls?" And she'd say, "Well, I have seven sons and three daughters." And they'd say, "Seven sons? Oh my gosh, can't." Uh, Now, when people react like that, it's like, what are you supposed to say? And it's like,
Right.
she had a great comeback, and she'd say, "Well, God gave me seven sons for a reason. Six to carry the casket and one to say the mass."
Oh, she sounds
And
like a
that was
sweetheart.
enough to shut down the conversation
I
and make people
bet. I
think like,
bet.
"Wait, what? Huh?" Now I heard that as, okay, six to carry the casket and one to say the mass. Like a good Catholic family, we got to have one priest in there
Hmm.
somewhere, right? Um, and by the time I was conscious, it was very clear the first six were not going to seminary. So I always heard it as like, is this some sort of a prophecy for me? I think when I declared a religious studies major and I went to divinity school, some parents would be like, "What career is going to come out of that?" No, I think my mom was like, "It's coming true.
Coming.
We're getting closer." Yeah.
It was
But I
already
did
lined
not
up.
go that route. I did not go for ordination. But I got to plan the mass with her. Actually, when she was in the last months of her life, she was on chemo and she was in hospice care,
Mm.
and at one point she just decided she was done. She had had enough of chemo. She was ready. She was ready, and so she went off of chemo. I went in for the weekend to visit, and we were watching Sound of Music, and somewhere in the middle of the movie, she just turns to me and says, "There's a song I want at my funeral." Now, in my career up to that point, I had been a campus minister for many years and a liturgist, and my background is in ritual, and so I love planning funerals, weddings, everything,
Mm.
any kind of liturgy, any kind of ritual. I love. So she just knew that was going to be something I was going to be involved in. So she said, "There's a song I want at my funeral." I thought, "Oh." that means I need to start planning the funeral. So I grabbed my laptop and opened up a new document. And as, Georg and Maria were falling in love, Mom and I were sitting there planning her funeral. And
Oh,
it was, it was a gift that I never wanted, but I'm so glad I got. Uh,
yeah, what an
that it
incredible
was an
memory.
extraordinary moment to be able to hear somebody, my mom in particular, to hear my mom reflect on her life and think, okay, how do I want people to remember me? Like,
Mm,
what's my last contribution to their experience of me, or the songs that I'm going to pick and the readings that I'm going to choose and what
mm.
I want to do. Um, so it was a really so I didn't get to say the mass, but I got to plan it with her, and that was an extraordinarily beautiful gift. Um, so that's where the title comes from. So it's
Mm.
a little bit reference to my mom and invoking her humor, and but I also it invokes one of my first identities. One of the first things I
Yeah.
heard her say she wanted, and I in some ways tried to give life to that.
You
So
identified with it. It was all on you. It was all riding on you.
yeah, no pressure. Yeah.
So, what are some of your earliest memories in the world you grew up in?
Mm. I was the youngest of a big family,
Mhm.
but the first nine were all born within 11 years of each other. And then
Wow.
I'm set, and then there's a 7 year gap, and then there's me. So people used to say, "Oh,
Wow.
you were a mistake." And I say, "No, I'm a delightful surprise. Thank you very much." So I remember a crowd just all the time. There was always a crowd. I remember little things that other people didn't have in their homes. Like we had a cafeteria milk machine in our kitchen. I thought every family should have that. And then when I started having friends and going to their houses, like, oh, where's your milk machine? Huh, interesting. So there were little things like that that were reminders of being a big family. On the
Mhm.
other hand, I was also really isolated because I was so much younger than my siblings.
Mhm.
And by the time they started having kids, I was so much older than my nibblings. So I was in this middle kind of half generation. Anytime there was a family event, anytime there was a holiday, it was, I was always sort of floating on the margins and I was always kind of peripheral. And um,
Mm.
so that dominates a lot of my memories. I grew up in, kind of a typical white, affluent, heteronormative suburb outside of Chicago. It was a lovely part of the world. Um, but I knew in my bones from a very young age, like, oh, this is not a world that's built for me. This is like I'm not at ease in this world. On the other
Mm.
hand, being part of a big family, being part of this world that I always felt on the outs, I feel like I paid a lot of attention to people and how they spoke, how they related to each other, how they moved through the world. And so I was able to pay attention to a lot of things. I had the
Mm.
time and the space to do that. That's a nice way of saying I was a really lonely kid and I didn't have a lot of friends. I remember one summer I read like the encyclopedia because I had nothing else to do. And it was like a 1972 World Book Encyclopedia that had been on my family's shelves for a long time. And, I learned all about countries like Rhodesia that don't exist. It didn't exist anymore. So, but it gave me an interest in like languages. Like I can remember turning the page to an example of the Phoenician alphabet and like,
Mm.
oh, there's a different kind of alphabet. And so I spent a week just like copying the Phoenician and Hebrew alphabets. And I'm like, oh, isn't that interesting? That was the way I filled my time. Uh, yeah,
Well, it sounds like it helped you develop a passion for learning, which
I think
is
it
all
did.
part
Yeah,
of who you are. Plus,
yeah.
there's something about that younger sibling that has they kind of have, I think they have an advantage that all of the other kids don't have by being able to kind of sit back and watch what works and what they get away with and what they don't. And especially in
Mhm.
your case, having been so much younger, you probably spent a lot more time with your mom and dad. So you probably got to see their side of it also.
I knew everything that was happening in the house.
Yeah.
Both, I learned so much from my siblings because,
Yeah.
I learned both the good stuff. They were listening to good music. They were watching good,
Mm.
by the time I was in like first and second grade, I was talking about Young Frankenstein and the Talking Heads and, you know,
Yeah.
no, no. 7-year-old is listening to that stuff. So they introduced me to really good stuff. One of my sisters is an artist and was an art student, and she used to take me to the museum in Chicago all the time.
Yeah.
And and she helped me learn how to see, how to appreciate beauty and color and form, and thing at 6 or 7 years old, I was having those moments with my older sister, and I really treasure that. Um, but on the other hand, yeah, I heard my parents' perspective on all of them. I heard everything that was going on. I heard about all the mistakes that they made. And
Sure.
later in life, when, I was in high school and I was really the last one home, and my parents were drinking a lot in those years.
Mm.
And then I really got to hear everything. Once the second glass of Chardonnay was poured for the night, the library was open, and my mom would read everybody's offenses, and so I got to hear everything that they thought about my siblings.
Mm.
But even in those years where it was so hard, it was I did have a closer relationship to my parents. And
Hmm.
my siblings knew that. We all knew that. But I met them at different stages in life. They
Hmm.
met young parents, and
That's right.
they were figuring shit out for themselves. They were becoming adults themselves
They were
as they
still
were having
growing.
babies.
Hmm.
My mom was 41 when she had me. My dad was 44
Yeah.
when I was born. As a very different stage of life to start parenting. And so I just met them at a really different stage of life. So on the one hand, yeah, they were a lot more lax with me because, they'd figured out what they need to stress out about. They knew what an emergency was. They knew when I had to, what was a scream of pain and what was a scream of attention. They knew that really,
They knew
really
all of
well.
it.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So I had it easier in a lot of ways, but then I
Mm.
also bore the burden that they didn't have to, when there was tension in the family, they could all go home and I was still stuck with my parents,
Mm.
with
Hmm.
drinking in particular with the alcohol. That often put me in a very precarious place. And uh, that's one of the things that I really explored in writing the book. Not just the impact on me, but like how did I respond at the time, and
Hmm.
how has that shaped me moving on? I've made peace with my parents drinking. Through the writing really healed me in a lot of ways on that level. But I'm angrier than I ever have been about my siblings in that case. I remember watching them watch me get into a car with my parents, and nobody said a word. Later you'd hear them talk about like, oh, can you believe how much they're drinking? I can't believe they're drinking and driving. Da, 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 da. They also had an 11-year-old in the back seat. Anybody notice? No? Okay. So I think as much as I've made peace with my parents on that level, it's stirred up so much more about my relationship with my siblings.
The writing specifically allowed you to make peace with your parents drinking, but also made you realize how much anger you were harboring over how
Yeah.
your siblings dealt with it. With that many siblings, I would think that somebody would come in. Like, anybody ever come in at any point and say, "Hey, mom and dad, like this is what we're noticing, and this is a problem." Did that
Well,
ever happen?
I think that's you would think you would hope that that would happen. Uh, the I think the complication that any family with addiction in it faces, communication
Mm.
and power dynamics, and it's so fraught. It's so, if you say the wrong thing to a person who is living with an addiction,
Mm-hmm.
that might be the end of the relationship. That might
Absolutely.
not, so especially as a kid,
Mm.
when you grow up in that, you learn how to avoid the mines.
Sure.
You learn how to stay in the safe zone. You learn what to not to respond to and what to respond to. My older siblings were out of the house before it got really bad.
Okay.
And I think they were coming at it from a really different angle.
Mm.
Um, they were more embarrassed than they were concerned.
Mm.
Uh, at one point, a few of them tried to stage an intervention, but I obviously it wasn't a very effective intervention because they didn't actually talk to everybody. They never said anything to me. I heard about the intervention after the fact from my mother at the dinner table when she was complaining about it. Uh, and I remember being shocked that why didn't anybody tell me this was happening? Like, I'm the one living with it.
Yeah.
Where am I in this equation? Yeah, so they were coming at it from such a different angle. It's painful to live with a family member, to have a family member who's going through any kind of addiction, any kind
Mm,
of challenge. Um, but they weren't sleeping there at night.
right.
They could go home. They had
Yeah.
space to go, and I didn't.
Right.
Yeah, so I think they were aware of it.
Yeah.
They tried it on their own terms. A couple of my siblings got real iced out by my mom for a long time because of it.
Mm.
But uh, yeah, no one ever noticed that there was a kid involved.
Wow, I imagine they probably had their own, many of them had their own lives and their own kids at that point too. And it's really easy to be distracted in your own stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So how has your identity shifted over time
Mm.
since those years?
I mean, I'm a hell of a lot gayer, I can tell you that much. Uh, I think about identity differently. I think when we're growing up, we assume, I inherited these genes and therefore I inherited these identities,
Mm,
and I'm gonna do my best with what I got. And I think I was working with that for a long time. And it really took writing this book and burnout was terrible, but it ultimately was a gift because it gave me the impetus to figure shit out, you know.
mm,
And I started to think about identity really differently. I started to think of identity less as a fixed thing. It's not a mask that we wear.
right.
It's a tool. It's something that we use to understand ourselves and understand others. It's a tool that we use to connect with other people and figure out where I feel safe, where I don't feel safe, So and that changes over time.
It does.
So I've come to a much different understanding of what identity itself means. It's not fixed for me.
Hmm.
It's not constantly shifting and fluid, but it's
Hmm.
something that I can construct.
Right.
Um, I think until a few years ago, I also felt like family ties were an obligation that were just unbreakable.
Mm,
Uh, I've uh, I've strayed from that, and that has really changed, and that has been really liberating, freeing.
mm, hmm.
It's given me ease to know I'm not obligated to deal with their shit.
Right.
Like I'm obligated to create my world and to do my best. Uh, and that really came to a head with my siblings, for example. Like when my husband and I were getting married, there was one particular sibling I didn't want there. I didn't want his
Mm,
energy there. I didn't want, and I made the decision. It was hard for an Irish Catholic boy to say, I'm not inviting my sibling to my own wedding.
hmm.
Um, and I chose not to invite him, and that caused a rift among my siblings. Some of them understood, and some of them thought, no, that this is family. This is
Right.
why would you not invite family? If you're going to invite one of us, you have to invite all of us. That was the rule that we grew up with. Uh, I don't feel that anymore. And there was,
Yeah.
the hard move of not inviting one particular sibling. Um, Once I started writing a couple years later, and I started unpacking my relationship with my siblings, I got a lot, that got a lot easier. And because I understood it as if I'm not getting from them what I want or need,
Hmm.
why should I keep giving them what they want or need? It's the relationship, a family can't just rely on obligation. A family has to constantly cultivate
That's right.
constantly cultivate and nurture those ties.
Like any relationship.
Any relationship,
Hmm.
any relationship. And I think that's true for any kind of relationship. If we assume it's just fixed and we're done and you never have to work on it, it's like we're married, great, cool. Well, that's, in 20 years you're going to be really unhappy if you're
That's
not
right.
constantly growing yourself and
Yeah.
figuring out who's growing next to you and
Yeah.
where you're growing together and where you're growing apart.
Yeah,
That's
because
that's
of that
fun.
identity tool that you were just talking
Yeah.
about, right? That shifts and changes over time. We all do. And I think
Yeah.
too, our generation and before our generation, I think that's changing. I say our generation, I'm assuming we were born in the same decade, but we were taught blood is thicker than water, no
Hmm.
matter what, family is family. And I have come to learn, and I think it takes, I mean, it really kind of takes some what's the word I'm looking for? Courage to be able to admit that sometimes the people that are supposed to be there for you,
Hmm.
sometimes the people that you're supposed to be able to count on the most are the ones that are the most toxic for you.
Yeah.
And you don't have to honor that blood is thicker than water thing. In
Yeah.
fact, it's probably best for some people if you don't
Yeah.
sometimes.
I mean, blood is thicker than water is such an interesting metaphor, isn't it?
It
And
is.
especially when you start to, okay, let's take it a step further. Blood is thicker than water, but blood makes a mess. And, and blood will leave stains that you have to
Yep.
work so hard to get out of your clothes and the rug. And,
If
so,
ever.
whereas water is
Right.
refreshing, it's what, 70% of our body. We need
Yeah.
it to survive and thrive. So, yeah, blood might be thicker than water, but
What does that mean?
but it
Yep.
also
Nope.
stains.
That's so good. That's so good. I love it. Did you pick a piece to read for us today?
I did.
I would
I
love to
did.
hear you
This
read.
is an excerpt from an essay called Dinner, and I reflect in this essay about the first time that we were able to entertain post quarantine. So
Mm.
and one of the things I love the most in the world is entertaining. I love setting a table. I love cooking for friends. I love welcoming people into our home, and I love the whole thing. So being deprived of that for a couple of years, that was that was painful. So I was very excited, um, and so this is an essay about getting ready for that, and yeah, I'll just go from there. Um, some folks like to cook when their guests arrive, but I've never been much good with multitasking. Like a good OCD Virgo, I had the meal prep scheduled to be finished by the time our friends arrived. Proudly ahead of schedule, I set the cutting board on the counter, put Spotify on shuffle, grabbed the knife, started chopping celery. I found myself singing along with Paul McCartney. When I get older, losing my hair. When I'm 64 was my mom's favorite song. That's a surprise to most folks who meet her. She wouldn't have been confused for a Beatlemaniac, but she knew a good lyric when she heard one. Paul sang on, and I thought this would have been a good moment to call her. I would open
Mhm.
with, "Hey, your favorite song just came on." Then tell her about the table and what I was making, talk about how work is going, catch up on family gossip, read into her silences and long pauses, get an update on their plans for heading to Arizona for the season, and hear the litany of who's sick, who's dying, and who's dead. I smiled, amused at this most Irish Catholic habit of tallying local suffering before she could hang up. But as Paul and I sang, "Will you still need me? Will you still feed me?" I choked, unable to sing through the tears that suddenly came from the corner of my eye. I muttered to myself, but not myself. I think I finally understand why this is your favorite song. When I came out to her, Mom's soundest argument, one I hadn't anticipated, was the fact that she'd never met a happy homosexual. Before she died, she never saw me in a truly happy, loving relationship. She never liked my ex, though she didn't tell me that till 3 months after we split. And she never met my husband, whom I think she'd secretly really like. She wasn't, let's call it, effusive that way. She never got to see me surrender to domestic bliss, table setting and all. She never knew that her favorite song was the soundtrack in my head every time my husband bakes a loaf of bread. I'm not surprised by how much I think about my mom while cooking. My kitchen is filled with so many triggers that I don't usually need Spotify to prompt a tumble down memory lane. For various birthdays or Christmases or housewarmings, she gave me a set of knives, a set of pots and pans, and a KitchenAid mixer, one of the reasons my husband married me. I added various things from her kitchen before and after she died, including measuring cups, serving plates, and salt and pepper shakers. Oh, and the Monsieur Crepe I borrowed in 1997. But hearing her favorite song made me look at the kitchen, really look at myself in the kitchen differently. I've adopted her very solitary approach to cooking, something my husband has noted several times. It gives me something to do with my hands and gets me out of my head. It helps me to turn down the volume on critical voices and to salve open wounds. I find myself making soda bread whenever I can't work through an idea or a dilemma. When I cook with others, however, I'm constantly attending to their needs or preferences and assuming that my cooking prowess will determine the future of our relationship. I doubt she carried the exact same kind of self-doubt and deference, but I think cooking gave Mom a similar oasis from a crowded life. By the time anyone else was rousing, she'd have breakfast made, lunches packed, a pot of tea brewed, and the day's crossword puzzle half finished. The first one to descend in the morning was greeted with a sigh of resignation, as if to say, "Okay, here we go."
That was so beautiful. Thank you so much. And so well read.
Thank
Wow,
you.
thank you for that. What did you learn about yourself while writing your memoir?
So much. I um I think the biggest thing that I learned about myself, I came to a much nicer self-image. I think I was pretty hard on myself before I started unpacking things. One of the lessons of writing like this is it's not just about understanding things, understanding the world. I understood and liked myself a lot better by the end of it. So that was a big one. Um, I started with the assumption that I was not resilient because I started trying to figure out I'm in this place of burnout. How did I get here? I must not be resilient. What did I miss along the way where I was supposed, I missed the day in school where they taught resilience or something. Um, but I came to understand it differently. I came to see that I was trying to live a life that was really not made for me. Um,
Mm,
Maybe best reflected in Beyonce's Break My Soul. When Break My Soul came out a few years ago, it was suddenly an anthem for me because it was, oh, this is a song about surviving and thriving in a world that's not made for you. They won't break my soul. Like, and that was something that I had to hammer myself to, convince myself to believe they will not break me over and over again. But that's exhausting after a long time.
mm,
So I think when I figured out, um, on the other side of the book, I figured out, oh, I don't want to just feel better and go back to that life. I want to build something new. And the biggest change has been work. Work has always been really important to me. As an educator, as an administrator, I loved my work, but I was exhausted by it. And um, I recognized that I spent my entire career wrapping myself around work
mm,
and giving up things for work, things like I missed family weddings, I missed Madonna and Lady Gaga concerts. Like, I gave up serious stuff for work. Um, but I was ready to start flipping the script. I wanted to shape work around me instead,
mm,
and the security that comes with a standard job, all that. I get it, but I
mm.
was in a position where I could make different choices, and the process of writing the book gave me a lot more confidence in that direction, in heading that direction, and not wanting to just return to the old thing, but to stop bending and stretching myself for others, but
Right.
instead let's wrap work around us. Like, isn't work supposed to serve us, not the other way around? So that's not going to change in the wider world unless each of us makes those choices. So that was a
Well,
choice I was ready finally to make.
good for you. I think most people
Thanks.
go through life never even realizing that they have a choice, especially some of us that, went to school for what it is that we do and spent,
Hmm.
15, 20, 30 years building a career. You kind of
Yeah.
tell yourself that you're happy and you tell
Yeah.
yourself until one day you tell yourself it's the only thing I know how to do. What else am I going to do? Right. And so I think a lot of times we just never take the opportunity to really step back and you reinvented yourself. So bravo to you for that because Not a lot of people would have the guts or the fortitude to actually follow through with it because it takes sacrifice. I've
Yeah.
been there. I left a big career too and did the exact same thing, like stood back and said, "Whoa, this is not even who I am as much as I have enjoyed making this life for myself.
Yeah.
This is not, it's not for me. It's not who I am and it's
And I
not,
think for a lot of people, it's scary to make that jump. It
it
is
is.
terrifying to make that jump.
Mhm.
If n nothing else, then because it's like I don't know who that person is on the other side.
Right.
So this is one of those moments where I look to Madonna, because you and I are a lot like Madonna, like the great reinventor herself,
Yep.
and my
That's
lifelong
right.
obsession with Madonna really paid off for me in this vein, because what you saw, what you see with Madonna every time she's got a new album, she's got a new persona, right? And the way she describes it, she doesn't talk about a new persona. Instead, she talks about pulling back a layer and letting the
Hmm.
world see a different layer of herself, letting her experience the world, from a different level, with so many layers pulled back. So I always keep that in the back of my mind. Like, yeah, it's not that I'm turning into someone new. I'm
Hmm.
just peeling back layers.
Yeah.
It's possible to remain yourself and to keep
Sure.
getting better and to keep
Sure.
becoming the better version of oneself.
Well, I think that's kind of what we're here to do. I think that's part of
Mm.
the game, this game we call life, is
Yeah.
constantly pursuing that. And like you said, kind of peeling back on that onion.
Mm.
So your writing touches on loss in many forms, be it beliefs or identities or people. Which type of loss do you think impacted you the most and why?
People. Um, as I said before, both my parents and my sister died within a year and a half of each other. Um, it revealed something to me that I really didn't expect to see, was how kind people could be.
Mm,
Um, I I was trying to get home when my dad was, in his last breaths, and I was trying to get home, and I had a connection through Denver, and I got off the plane in Denver, and I saw on my phone, I got the message that my dad died,
mm,
and I went to like an airline club lounge and asked something about changing a flight, and she said, "Well, let me see what I can do." I said, "Oh, you see, I just started crying." She got up behind the counter and said, "Come this way," and sat me down. She didn't have to do that. She could have, "Sir, pull yourself together and go stand over there." Uh, but she went out of her way to do that. When my sister died, my other sister really was having a tough time with it. And so I had to make a very last minute change to go to Chicago so I could be with my sister. And then we were going to move on to Cleveland, which is where the funeral was going to be.
mm,
And I'm in the back of an Uber on the way to the airport and I'm on the phone with the airline trying to change my ticket, but I'd already checked in. So it was complicated. So when I get off the phone and we're pulling into SeaTac, the Uber driver who met me, 20 minutes before, said, I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I just want to say I'm really sorry for your loss. Is there
mm.
anything that I can do for you right now? And I was like,
Wow.
why are people being so nice? So it was, as hard as it was every time, it was also incredibly beautiful to see how kind people were. I remember standing at my sister's wake, as people were coming in, and I'd never met these people, and they were just so happy to tell me stories about her. They were so happy to point out things that I never knew about her, that none of us, knew about her. At my mom's funeral, likewise, it was just amazing to see how many people really went out of their way just to show up and be present. I couldn't believe it. A colleague and very close friend from Washington, D.C. showed up. Uh, didn't even stick around to talk afterwards, but she just wanted and she let me know that she was there on behalf of all of my friends in DC, that we all worked
Mm.
together and that she was the one who was able to make it. And she wanted me to know that they were all thinking about me, that they all wanted to be present too. So that's what I really hold on to from those moments of loss. Every time
Mm.
there has been a significant loss, there's been a beautiful safety net on the other side, and it has been strangers and it has been, oh my God, I'll tell you one story. Oh, okay. When my sister died, I was actually on a cruise to Alaska,
Oh, wow.
with some friends, and we were all about to turn 40, and so it was supposed to be like our 40th birthday trip. And I found out on day three that she died. It was pretty sudden, and so I had to get off the boat in Juneau, and at 6 o'clock in the morning, trying to get off the ship, and the a comedian and his girlfriend, he had been hired for the ship. He was also getting off the ship at the same time, and we ended up being on the same flight back to Seattle. But I was standing there, and the comedian's girlfriend turned to me and said, "Oh, were you working on the ship too?" I said, "No, I just I have to leave because my," and then I just started crying. My sister died. And here's this stranger who really I wouldn't have begrudged her if she just said, "Oh, okay," and then walked away and went on with her day. But she just pulled me into this hug. And it was a little uncomfortable for about 5 seconds because I also saw her boyfriend walking toward us, and he looked like, why is she hugging that guy?
Mm.
But then he had this look of like, oh, it's happening again. Like, I think she's just that person. Everywhere she
Yeah.
goes,
Yeah.
she's comforting someone. And so we ended up, she was just so kind to me there. Then we ended up sitting next to each other on the plane. The only ticket that I could get was in first class because it was such last minute, and so they had actually tried to figure out how to give me one of their first class seats, and I ended up sitting next to them anyway. And so, but the whole flight, she just talked to me and wanted to tell me to tell stories about my sister, and I will never forget, like, here's this total stranger who basically spent 8 hours comforting me. But it was
Mm.
an extraordinary gift that she had. I, if there are moments where I feel God's presence really strongly and clearly, it's in people like that. That she
Yeah.
had just such a presence that was just, she was ready to respond to whoever needed her. And I would never have experienced that if I hadn't been in such a dark place, if I hadn't
Mm.
experienced that loss, if I wasn't grieving like that. It was such a beautiful gift to be able to see people in that light.
Well, bless you for looking at it through that lens too, that you're able to see it that way in such deep grief. Because I can imagine you were probably traveling by yourself out of Juneau, completely by yourself. I can only imagine how awful that would be. So, I mean, kudos to you for being able to recognize that beauty in the midst of all of that pain.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think humans get a bad rap, like when we see each other buying up all of the toilet paper and then selling it at 10 times the price. Like, I guess we all have our demons, but at the end of the day, we're all pretty soulful people and we really want to help and do the right thing.
I think that's true. I saw that as a teacher. I saw
Mm.
that as a teacher every day, and you look at a kid and you watch a kid make choices and you think,
Mm.
okay, this is the first time that child has ever made this choice before.
Mm.
And what is that going to do for her down the road? Or what is that going to do for other people around her down the road?
Yeah.
And it was most profound when you got to see kids make a choice between, walking away or staying present. When they had a classmate or a friend in need, they could look the other way or they could stick their own necks out and try to help. I
Mhm.
was always really inspired by that. I was always really moved. I would assume like, oh, these teenagers aren't, they're not going to get, I'm going to have to work so hard to get them to care. But no. Um, one year, we always took the senior, when I was a campus minister, we always took the seniors on a little retreat for 2 days, just a few days before graduation. And it was great because it was their chance to just be together,
Yeah.
say goodbye, and then do all the festivities, the pomp and circumstance and everything. And one year, there was a student whose father died. He had been declining, and we knew it was on our radar that the family was experiencing this. But we got the call on the last day of the retreat, and so I got the call from her mom, and I went to talk to her. There was another student that I knew had also lost a parent a few years before. They weren't super close, but I tapped that second student. I said, "Hey, would you mind come with me for a second?" And then I went and talked to the student, and um, and this other kid who had experienced something similar knew exactly what to do. She just
Mm.
went and sat next to her and said, "I'm here if you want to talk, or we can just sit and look at the water." And they just sat and looked at the water. And as word spread um, among the rest of the class, like one by one, they all showed up. And they didn't get in her face. They didn't say anything. They didn't do anything. All they did was just show up and sit down.
Held space.
I can't tell you how beautiful that is and how reassuring to see, like, here's these teenagers on a retreat right before graduation. They have every right not to be thinking about this one person's loss. And yet they dropped everything just to be present to each other. Um, I think about moments like that when I when I see the other shit going on in the news and the other things
Mm.
that are happening in the world. It's like, okay, right. We still have the capacity to be so good to each other and to ourselves. That potential, that capacity is always there.
Yeah. I think it's inherent. It's other things that change it,
Yeah.
right? I think we're I mean, we're born survivors, but we're also born with the human impulse, and that is
Mm,
to care for people. What a beautiful story. Thanks for
mm.
sharing that. Can we talk about religion for a minute?
Sure.
So you grew up Catholic, and I've heard you say you had a beautiful religious experience, which I think is you're probably an anomaly coming from the gay community, growing up as a pretty devout Catholic, as I
Hmm.
understand it, right?
Hmm. Yeah, my parents were of the generation of like Vatican II Catholics, so they
Mm,
both, were born early 20th century, and they kind of grew up in Chicago amidst as a period of that we call liturgical renewal,
mm,
the liturgical renewal era, and it was a time when, the Catholics, American Catholics in particular, we're looking more at social justice. We're looking more at the social teachings of the church. We're looking more at ethics. We're looking at ritual and liturgy as this is an opportunity for the community to come together and be energized, not just to go through a bunch of weird Latin. So this is, it's part of what ended in the 60s in Vatican II and the major reforms of Catholic liturgy and kind of restructuring of the church. My parents grew up in that. They were educated by the Jesuits. They both were really committed to there's kind of a three strands tied together of, faith and justice and intellect. So
mm,
that was what religion was for us growing up. We grew up in a pretty, looking back at it, it was a pretty progressive parish, even though it was a very wealthy suburb. It was a very forward-thinking, a very justice-oriented, parish. Uh, yeah, so I had a really positive experience of religion in that context. I also never heard the negative messaging.
mm,
I didn't hear any messaging. That's a different problem, but I didn't hear negative messaging about being gay. There was nothing coming out of the pulpit that was saying like, "You're going to hell if you do this." It's like, and I understand other people had that experience, and they have a very different experience of
mm,
religion, of the church growing up. But my experience was always really positive, particularly when it comes to like my sexual identity.
mm,
I never experienced a conflict between my religious identity and my sexual identity. And part of that was something that my mom really ingrained in me. this idea of the primacy of conscience. So in Catholic theology, your conscience is that thing that is part of you that is closest to God.
Mm.
And when your conscience, starts setting off alarm bells, that's the thing to listen to. So my mom used to say, like, oh, even if the Pope himself said it, what does he know? He's just another priest, she used to say. Uh, even if the Pope himself said something and your conscience was still telling you, like, nope, that's not right, the conscience was the thing to follow. So when I started to understand myself as a gay person, um, yeah, I had to figure a lot out. I knew there was a lot of messaging. I knew there was theology that I needed to navigate. But I also, even in the 90s, you started to see communities like Dignity pop up, which Dignity is a coalition of gay LGBTQ Catholics.
Hmm.
And they would have sort of rogue parishes, have masses for just them, and it was sort of a way to maintain their connection to their faith and practice without having to go into a parish and face a hateful priest or snickering, neighbors or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, so while there was the negative stuff coming out, there was also positive stuff happening too. New Ways Ministry was getting a lot of press when I was in high school. Sister Janine Gramick and oh God, who's the priest who founded? Oh, I'm so bad. But Janine Gramick is one of my heroes, and she's this nun who uh, she was ejected from her religious order because this was her call. She felt like I need to minister to queer Catholics, and not to try to convert them, but to make
Right.
a space where they felt safe and where the rest of the world could start to see their dignity, their inherent dignity. So anytime there was that negative messaging, I was also seeing, the other side of it. I have an aunt who's a Benedictine nun, and she was also very much engaged in inclusive strategies, in the church. Women's communities in particular, I think are voices to listen to within the church. Always have been for me, but especially when it comes to questions around queer identity and being part of the Catholic community. So all of that is to say, yeah, I had a really positive understanding of religion. I had a really positive experience of religion, which is why religion classes were always the most interesting to me.
Yeah.
They were the only really interdisciplinary courses in school. Religion was a little bit anthropology, a little bit history, a little bit art, a little bit literature, a little bit
Yeah.
philosophy. So I loved that. I loved being able to enter the conversation from any angle. You couldn't do that in other classes. I
Right.
declared a religious studies major in college. I went to divinity school. I started teaching religion. I was a campus minister at a Catholic school. I was basically a professional Catholic for a long time. And I saw it as I was exercising my conscience. I was listening to my conscience the whole way, and I wanted to contribute to moving the needle in the church toward inclusion. I believe, I still do, um, but I believe that how I'm created is how I'm created, and the rest of the church is going to catch up to that at some point. There have been
Good for
things like
you.
in history that, Galileo was executed because he had a scientific insight that was at conflict with the teaching of the church.
Right.
I don't think I'm getting beheaded anytime soon. But I also recognize, yeah, my contemporaries maybe don't see it, but I think they're going to get there, just the way as we all came to recognize, oh, we do actually float around the sun. Oh, maybe he was
Hmm.
right. Sorry, Galileo.
Hmm.
I think hopefully it's going to be sooner, but I don't think it's going to be in my lifetime. But I'd love to see the theology of the church
Hmm.
recognize the diversity of God's creation instead of clamping down on what we know and what's
Hmm.
familiar. Because I
Hmm.
think that's to me the theological problem, right? When you
Right.
hear people invoke religion and say, no, that's wrong. That's not how, that's not religion. That's not what the religion teaches. Like, well, this is how I was made. Like, my body is telling me that this
Right.
is, and the language I use, God made me this way. So, like, instead of
Argue with
saying you're
that.
different and
Yeah.
wrong and let's get rid of you, why don't you say, oh, God is so much more creative than I thought. Like, oh,
Right.
God's creation is so much further beyond what I can understand.
Hmm.
Like I have compassion for people who have never been able to see beyond, the rules and the structures. But then once you do take a peek beyond, like you have to open yourself to like, well, yeah, creation is more than I understand. Like I don't understand everything about the world. Why would I impose that and make other people follow these rules that are so clearly arbitrary? Yeah.
Mm.
So I started teaching and I was working as a campus minister with that belief. Like I wanted the church to grow in that direction. And then I got to a point where I realized that that can't be my battle. Like
Mm.
I was suffering along the way, and I had a pivotal moment hearing Dan Savage talk that completely cracked open my self-understanding as an educator, as a Catholic. I was at a conference, and he was talking. I tell the story in my book, and there's an essay called "Dan Savage Ruined My Life," because in that moment, Dan Savage totally ruined my life. So Dan Savage, the columnist, writer, he talks about sex and relationships, and he started with his husband. He started the It Gets Better project to collect videos to send to kids to send the message, it gets better. Things might
Mm.
be terrible now. It will get better. And it was a hugely successful project. It continues to thrive. So I'm at this conference and the room is packed, all these educators wanting to hear about the project and how they can integrate that into their schools or into their programming. Questions started, and one of the questions was from somebody who was reading a question, and she explained, I'm reading this for somebody else because they can't even stand up in this room without risking their jobs. And everybody in the room was like, oh my God, can you imagine working in a place like that? Except for those of us in religious schools. And we were like, oh,
Mhm.
do we know you? So the question continued, and it was something like, I'm a queer educator. I'm here to, be a presence to queer students in this very anti-queer environment. What advice would you give to someone in my position? And Dan took a second and he cocked his head and he said, you're not going to like my answer. And that's when I kind of perked up, like, oh, what's he going to say? And he said, my advice is to get your resume together because you think you're there, you think you're sending the message of, I'm here, you're safe. The message you're really sending is that it's okay to leave part of yourself at the door on the way into work in the morning. And I have never been able to let go of that. It was just immediately it exploded my self-understanding as an educator. It totally destroyed that notion that I was moving the needle in the church, that my entire mission and education up to that point just completely fell apart.
Mm.
And all I could focus on was, oh my God, have I sent that message to my kids? Have I sent the message that is a, they all knew I was gay, but I couldn't talk about it.
Mm.
If I was going to get married, there wasn't going to be a celebration in school about it, like there would be for heterosexual teachers. So I had just kind of been okay with those things for so long. And then Dan Savage, since that moment, he made me see it all so differently. So that really set the path for me to leave Catholic schools. But it wasn't just I'm done. I'm out of this. It was this isn't my battle. Like this shouldn't be my burden. Like this is hey straight people, this is your burden. Like if you want the
Mm.
church to be more inclusive, then you make it more inclusive. I don't have to suffer along the way. It was a long journey to get to that point, to that insight
Yeah.
for me. Uh, so I often say Dan Savage ruined my life, and I'm so glad he did.
Yeah. Yeah. It led to something greater.
Yeah.
What do you think will? What do you think will push or is pushing that progression and the change forward in the church?
Well, the flippant Catholic response would be, well, this is the work of the Holy Spirit.
Mm. Fair.
I do think the church is going to move in that direction, but it's, the Catholic Church is a billion people around the world.
Mm.
It's hard to get a group of five people to agree on a type of pizza to order. Like, never mind a billion people, navigating ethical and theological questions. Um, but with our most recent Pope, Francis, and our newest Pope, Leo the 14th,
Hmm.
they both, just their names tell you a lot about their agenda and where they want to lead the church. They're looking at a church, a poor church for the poor, is how Francis described it.
Hmm.
Um, Leo has embraced the moniker of being called the woke pope because woke just means committed to social justice. And if you look
Hmm.
at the social teaching of the church, everything about the teaching of the church resonates with, what we align with
Yeah.
wokeism or whatever. So, so if for two papal periods we've got leaders looking in this direction, that can have a big impact. Just turning the head of the entire
Hmm.
community is incredibly hard work.
Hmm.
And I think they're letting us look more directly at a path of social justice as that being the beacon to follow, not piety, not John Paul II and Ratzinger, what is his name, Benedict, were looking in a very different direction. They were looking at the institution. They wanted to protect the institution.
Right.
I think this Pope and the last one, we're looking more at the experience of people and like, okay, well, the institution is important. Yeah, but the institution should be serving people, not the
Right.
other way around. So that reorientation, I think we're still growing out of Vatican II. The
Hmm.
church has a council every 150 years. It's not a decade by the decade thing. The changes that were set in motion in between 1962 and 1965 with Vatican II, we're still implementing and negotiating and fighting over those changes.
Hmm.
And there are regressions and there are pullbacks and changes and
Hmm.
tweaks, but that's evolution, isn't it? That's growth. So
It
the
is.
more people that hold on to that justice-oriented church, the more people that see themselves so personally connected to that, uh, the faster we'll get to that reality.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's a really important point that you bring up with the papacy too, because it seems to me like with the right direction, it shouldn't take more than one or two generations. I mean, although the Catholic faith is so rooted in tradition, sometimes those roots dig in pretty deep. But here's
Hmm.
the thing, people grow old and they die, and
Yeah.
new younger people come in and take their place, right? So
Yeah.
I think you're probably right. Maybe not in our lifetime, but I would imagine it will be heading in that direction.
Yeah, I heard somebody describe themselves as a short-term realist and but an ultimate optimist.
Yeah,
And I thought, oh, that captures my approach
I
to the
love
Catholic
it.
Church. Like in
Yeah.
the short term, yeah, I know shit isn't happening.
Not
I
in
know
this
I'm probably not
lifetime.
going back to church anytime soon.
Right.
But I still hold on to that identity is still important to me. I still
Yeah.
identify as Catholic. I don't think of myself as post-Catholic or ex-Catholic. I'm not converting. I'm not joining another religious community. I want to be in my religious community.
Yeah.
But it's too painful to go to right now. And
Yeah.
so I might not be going back to church anymore.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that I don't see the value of,
Right.
the survival and continuing growth of the church, continuing evolution of the church.
Mhm. How has your faith changed over time? Changed or morphed or grown?
I have, uh, I think it gets deeper. Okay, let me qualify this. When people talk about religion, they talk about, oh, religion and spirituality, and they say, oh, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual.
Mhm.
I'm not spiritual, I'm religious. I am not naturally spiritual. Uh, for me, and I think that took me a while to embrace. Like, I think I wanted to say, "Oh no, I'm very naturally spiritual," and that's the thing that's most important. No, um, for me, I recognize that religious practice is what opened the doors for me into a spiritual space. If I'm able to feel that, if I'm able to engage that, it's because I've got the practices that have led me there, that have opened that door for me. Um, I think I've come to more nuanced understanding of religious diversity too. I think that has
Mm.
been a major impact on my faith. I don't, I think of myself as a pluralist. I
Hmm.
can't believe that this is the only way to be religious. This is the only way to be human. I think
Right.
when we recognize, different religious practices, different cultural practices around the world where humans make meaning, they're inspired by their local environments. They're inspired by their physical and social experiences.
Yeah.
And those are different. And so they lead to different insights and they lead to different paths. I'm not a believer that we're all doing the same thing. I'm not a believer that all religions are one.
Hmm.
Uh, I think there's value and there's meaning in that difference. And I think I've gotten a lot more comfortable with that difference. I'm not interested in converting anybody. I'm
Hmm.
not interested in even like talking to Christians about scripture, and when people start pulling out the scripture to like justify an argument, it's like I just want to walk away. Like this is
Yeah.
not useful. This isn't interesting. Like what is this doing? We're just rehashing things that neither of us fully understand. So
Yep.
why
That
don't
nobody
we?
fully understands.
Yeah. So, but what we could do is say, okay, that's interesting. So what are you going to do with that? And I can respect your choice, and you
Right.
can respect my choice.
Right.
It doesn't mean that there's one right, there's one wrong. I think that's been a big thing for me. I've always been, I'm not gonna say always. In the last 10 years, I've been uh, clinging to a phrase by Christian Wyman in My Bride Abyss. Um, a friend of mine gave me the this book after my mom died, and it was, how sometimes you get the gift that is just the right thing at the right time.
Mhm.
And I started reading this, and it was all the big questions that I was swimming through, and it was all this grief that I was working with. And Christian Wyman's book, My Bride Abyss, gave me um, space and gave me language to start to understand it. And there was something in there that really, really stuck with me. He wrote, "If your faith, if you believe at 50 what you believed at 15, then you have not lived." I did, I might get that tattooed on me at some point, like just because it is such a profound insight. And it's have you read My Bride Abyss? It's
No.
a it's a memoir that he wrote after he had been diagnosed with cancer. He thought it was a terminal illness, and then it wasn't. But he started writing, here's the book I've always wanted to write. So he started writing, and then he survived, and then he was able to
Wow.
expand, and so it's this beautiful piece of philosophy and poetry, and but his own personal reflection on his experiences. That was always, as a book itself, it was just always an inspiration for me. But that particular insight is just so profound. I hope I don't see the world the same way in another 50 years. Like
Mm.
if I make it another 50, I hope I don't see the world with the same lens. I hope I have honed or changed or sharpened or picked a different color for my lens. I hope it evolves over time. I hope
That's what
that
it's
for
all about.
anybody. Yeah. Life's boring if you're always seeing it from the same angle,
Or
you know?
painful trying to keep it all in a box.
Amen.
You know what I mean? Like we have to allow ourselves to expand. We have to allow ourselves to change.
Yeah.
Um, it's change is the one of the few things in this world that we can always count on.
Mm.
So I do my best to embrace it. Sometimes it's a little bumpy, but I do my best to embrace it. It's a fact of life for sure.
Yeah. I feel like I'm pulling a lot of quotes out of the air right now, but
No, I love it.
uh, I was at a conference for school leaders once, and Harriet Rasmussen, who is a scholar of organizational change, was talking about change.
Mm-hmm.
And she said something about how, we all talk about how change is hard and people avoid change because change
Mm-hmm.
is hard. And she said, no, 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 no. People don't avoid change. Change always comes with grief, and people avoid grief. And so if
Mm.
you are making change in a community or to your own daily pattern or to a social order, you have to make room for that grief and to anticipate it. Let people grieve the change. Am I going to be able to grieve this if I make this change? Yeah, that was a really profound insight for me. And it started, I saw my job really differently when I looked at it that
Yeah.
way. It's a lot easier to be compassionate with stubborn folks or the curmudgeons. It's like no, it's not that they are anti-change. It's just
Right.
this is hard. It is
You have to let go
emotional
of
to let
something in order to
yeah, and that's
change.
hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a lot easier to be compassionate when you realize oh yeah, they're not just anti-change. It's
Hmm.
there's something deeper, very human at work in
Hmm.
this resistance or in this mess. Yeah.
It's true. How about your writing process when you were pulling together all of these essays and adding to them over those couple of years during COVID? Did you have a routine? What did it look like?
Ish, ish. I wish I had a more coherent response because I love hearing about writers who are so dedicated. I love hearing the stories about, oh, I get up in the morning, I make a pot of coffee, and then I start writing, and I don't do anything else for 4 hours, and then I get up. It's like that's amazing, but oh my God, I would never get my laundry done if I did that every day. I would not.
Right. I'm not always
Um,
inspired by the clock
yeah,
either. I
yeah,
can schedule time for myself, but then I sit down and I'm like, nope. It's not
yeah.
after 20 minutes of staring at my blank screen. It's not happening today.
I hear that, and I don't, why torture ourselves? I had those experiences. Shouldn't I be more disciplined about this? And like,
No.
nothing's coming. Instead, I started to pay attention to when did I have something that I was really chewing on?
Mm.
Then I knew
Hmm.
I needed to make space. It helped that I had a newsletter, and so I had the kind of a challenge of getting something out every week.
Yeah.
I'm less disciplined about that now, but I'm
Yeah.
actually starting to work on my next book, and so I'm trying to revive that energy to, again, get the newsletter going so that I can really
Yeah.
discipline myself and start getting stuff out. Um, but that was helpful to have that outlet of it just gives me I have to get something out. I know it's not going to be perfect. I know it's not going to have everything that I want to say. But I was able to get it out and I'd get
Mhm.
some responses. And the things that I got a lot of responses to, or just one profound response, I'd be able to hold on to that and say, "Oh, okay, this is a piece of writing I want to hold on to. This is something I'm going to come back to." So I was looking for engagement. I was looking for any sort of affirmation.
Yeah.
Youngest child complex. I'm always looking for a pat on the head, right? So I also can't write in a quiet place. I can't do anything in a quiet place. My natural habitat is a coffee shop. So like this goes back to when I was in college and grad school, and people would go study at the library. I never understood that. Libraries just make me bonkers. So, but if I sit I can camp out in a coffee shop for 6 hours and just be happy as a clam
Oh,
because
that's
the
so funny, but
noise, the
silence is
music
deafening.
and the noise and the commotion, it makes me tunnel vision. It makes me kind of
Sure.
focus on what I need to focus on. But then when I need a break or I need inspiration or I'm stuck on an idea, all I have to do is look up and look around, and there's always an interesting sort of crew of people at a coffee shop, right?
That's
So
true.
I just, stop and watch people and or get up and get a cup of coffee or a little snack or something. But that for me was if there was any sort of a habit or a routine, it was about place. It was about recognizing there are certain places where I just I would sit down and write and it happened. It worked. It clicked.
Mm.
So I'd wait for knowing that I had inspiration or I knew that I was chewing on something or
Mhm.
grappling with something, and I found myself in the right place, and then I could be camped out for 8 hours and be perfectly happy.
Yeah.
When I did learn though once upon a time in grad school, like don't spend too long in a coffee shop because other people need the seats. So I would do rotations. I'd do like my morning at 1369, and I'd do my afternoon at Diesel, and if I did an evening thing, I'd go to another coffee shop. So I found myself doing that here in Seattle too. And once I was able to go to coffee shops again, I was like, all right, I'm getting my coffee shop pattern. Right. So I've got my
Well,
Fremont
there's
coffee, I've got Zoka, I've got Fuel, I've got a whole map of coffee shops on the map on my phone. And it's like, okay, where am I going today? Oh, okay, we're going to Fuel. I gotta write. Okay, yeah.
No shortage of them in Seattle. You had the world to choose from of coffee shops.
Was that the most Seattle answer I could possibly like? I'm inspired by
Most
coffee
definitely.
shops.
How did you
I was most
decide?
inspired when I grew out a man bun and started getting tattoos. Yeah, that would be the
Very
second most Seattle
Seattle-ish.
response.
Yep, you're definitely a Seattlean now. Um, how did you decide? I mean, you may have just answered it because you said that you would wait and see what responses you got from readers, and then the ones that you got lots of responses to were the ones that you put more time in. How else did you decide what to add and what to
Hmm.
keep out?
Um, this was actually a very deliberate decision for me.
Mm.
When I knew that I was going to start writing and putting things out on a newsletter, I'm not one to air the family laundry. I'm
Mm.
not one to, I don't want whatever messes in my life. I don't need the whole world to see that.
Right.
Um, Particularly when it was other people's messes or when other people were impacted or involved. So that became a really clear line for me. Like, what's
Mhm.
my story and what's somebody else's story? I didn't want to tell anybody else's story. So it was actually really helpful working with an editor when we were putting the book, putting the flow together,
Mhm.
and she helped me. Uh, she helped me see really, really clearly, is that your story or are you borrowing that from someone else? Or are you projecting that onto someone
Mm.
else? So that was a really, even though it was an intentional for me to, I want to tell my story. Then, it still slip. I still project
Sure.
onto other people,
Yep.
uh, but the editing process helped me kind of comb through and be really intentional, really deliberate about that. I'm not interested in telling anybody else's story.
Mhm.
Uh, and several of my siblings, I think, were a little nervous when they found out I was writing a book.
I'm sure. I think most
My
families are.
my sister Patty is number 9. I'm number 10. She's number 9, and she's my best friend.
Mhm.
And she was, very intimately involved. She was very close along the way and was keeping tabs on it. And as soon as I had a copy, I sent it to her. I was very excited for her to be a first reader. Um, and then a couple of my siblings went to Patty because they knew, Irish Catholics, we don't ever have direct conversations. So, like, I want to talk to Bill, but I'm going to talk to Patty instead. Um, so a few of them went to Patty, like, I hear Bill's writing a book. Should we be concerned? I love that for two reasons. One, oh my God, why don't you just ask me? And two, what power do I hold that
Right.
what stories are you afraid that I'm going to tell? So, it was even, if they had asked me, like, hey, shouldn't we be worried? Like, the answer I would have given is, no, this is my story. I'm not interested in
Mhm.
telling your story. You can write your own book. Like, if you don't like
Mhm.
what I've written, write your own damn book. But it was a really interesting reaction to come up. And then a few have read it. I actually don't know how many have read it. Once again, communication is not our strength. But a couple of my siblings have reached out, and my brother Dick really was very kind. And the first thing he said was, I guess I didn't know you very well. And so I feel like I know you better, and I'm really sorry it took me this long. That was
Wow.
not a reaction I expected to get. But it was also incredibly satisfying. There's something really healing about that too.
Yeah.
And he's number 2, and to hear one of my oldest siblings um, recognize that, oh yeah, I never really took the time to get to know you. So
Mm.
I'm glad that now I had this chance. That was a beautiful moment.
Yeah. So for those pieces that were a bit more emotional, what did you do in terms of self-care while you were working through all of it?
Hmm. Well, as I mentioned, the entire world was falling apart. So when I was writing a lot of this, um, through the editing process, that's really where it felt like, okay, now I've got this project and it's happening, and now it's turning into a book. And I started worrying about two things. One, am I actually going to finish this? I am not a completionist. I'm a good starter, and
Yep.
then if I lose confidence or if I lose steam, oh, it's okay. I don't deserve a book. It's fine. I would have walked away just fine. Um, so one form of self-care was constantly reminding myself that no, you have a story that's worth telling. You have a story that's worth telling. You have a story that's worth telling. Um, I just had to keep reminding myself that yeah, this is worth it. And even if nobody reads the book, like it'll be what an accomplishment just to finish this. And so I was able to finish it, and that felt really good. So that was one form of self-care, just kind of I'm not keeping my expectations realistic. I'm not like that. But it was more like what's important here. What's important is not fame and fortune. What's important is I can tell the story that I want to tell, and
Mhm.
what a privilege that is to be able to do this. And so that
Mhm.
was keeping my sights on that. That was really important. Um, I also for the first time in my life, I really depended on someone else to help take care of me. One of the things that I knew, one of the reasons I knew I wanted to marry my husband was because I had this instinct of like, no, I really want him to take care of me. I'd never had that instinct, with my
Yeah.
ex. I never had that, I never wanted him to take care of me. I've never had that feeling. I've always wanted to take care of other people. And so that was the first time. No, I really want you to take care of me. That's great. And
Mm.
so during the writing process, during the editing process, John was so good about, he was interested, but not prying. He didn't want to, he was reading my newsletter as those essays were coming out, as I was, if I had something I wanted to bounce off of him, he was open to it. But most of the time it was just about um, just being focused on being good to each other. The world
Mm.
was so hard, between,
Mhm.
well, it kind of still is. Like since 2020, it's just that much harder.
Mhm.
Uh, so to go through this process and to know that I've just got somebody at my back,
Yeah.
that was incredibly powerful for me. That helped me. And one of the things that John always has really the message that he sent me from the beginning was, you need to be kind to yourself. And
Oh.
so he would say that to me, and then I started saying it to myself. Be kind to yourself.
Mm.
Be kind to yourself. And so that really sustained me through the whole writing and editing process.
Mm.
That and a lot of music. A lot of Madonna along the way.
Oh,
Madonna is
I
always
love
healing.
Madonna. God bless Madonna.
Amen.
Really. So much of my life I have found I've healed through listening to Madonna.
Do you have
Every
a
album.
favorite album or era or
Oh,
song?
absolutely.
Anything
It has
stand
to
up?
go back to Like a Virgin. Have to go back to the OG. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What is it about Like a Virgin? What is it about Madonna that serves you?
I think it just is nostalgia. I think it's just
Mm.
the age that I was when she was kind of coming onto the circuit and what she represented for girls and what she represented for
Yeah.
women. She's such a liberating presence and not just my life, but I mean, look at, I think up until very, very recently, she was the largest selling female pop star
Hmm.
in the world. So, yeah, I don't know. I think I loved what she represented.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a lifelong, I was a Madonna wannabe as a kid, but I kind of kept it under wraps for a long
Mm.
time because that
Mm.
was tantamount to coming out. It's like, oh, you like
Sure.
Madonna?
How old
Okay,
were you?
gay.
Can I ask
Uh,
how old were you when you came out?
once I got to college. I tell
Wow.
that story in the book because I thought I was going to come out when I got to high school, and
Mm.
I started high school in 1990, the same year that Like a Prayer was released and Vogue was released in 1990. Um, I really thought I was going to come out in high school. By the time I was 13, I was like, okay, this is me, cool.
Yeah.
I went to an all-boys Catholic high school. There were 1,500 students, 1,500 boys in this building, so you can imagine what it smelled like. But
Oh,
the
sure.
uh, the first day of school, I was in a stairwell, and one of my new classmates shoved me up against the wall and spit the word faggot in my face and kept walking. And like I, I was like, okay, two things. One. I'm not coming out right now. Like, this is not safe. Like, and
Mm,
two, how did he know? Like, how does he know? Like, how did he know? I barely knew. Like, I was just figuring it out myself, but it wasn't about what he knew or what, that's something that toxic
hmm.
males do is
Yep.
that's a tool to
It's fear.
intimidate people and establish and maintain their own power.
Yeah, that's all fear based.
I was just along the way, but that's a moment that has, I mean, that scarred me
I'm sure.
to this day. I still the moment is very vivid for me. So I knew like, okay, I'm not coming out now. We're gonna wait till college. And I'm a good Virgo, so I was able to compartmentalize it and just put it on the side.
Yeah.
And then once I got to college, I was like, okay, where's my boa? I'm ready. And it's not like it was a surprise. I mean, I was a musical
Sure.
theater lover as a kid. I was obsessed with Bernadette Peters and Angela Lansbury when I was like 10.
Oh, your
Like,
family knew for
oh,
sure.
right.
Yeah.
They had to know. They had to know. Like there was no secret. There was no secret. But when I finally did come out, in some ways I wish I had come out before high school, but I think that would have made high school worse.
Hmm.
Um, I I'm glad I came out when I did because I had the language and I had the self-awareness and I had gone through a rough patch. I had gone through a really, really tough depression and anxiety when I was in high
Yeah.
school. Um, I was suicidal for a while.
Mm-hmm.
This is a common story for a lot of queer kids, for a lot of kids. High school's hard. Being a
Hmm.
teenager is hard.
Yeah.
Uh, Never mind the extra layers that some of us, are experiencing. Uh, so it was just, yeah, what a time. What a time. I'm so glad I didn't come out though in high school. I'm glad I waited because then I could come out on my own terms.
Hmm.
Nobody was going to push back and say, "Oh, you're too young. You don't know what you're talking
Hmm.
about." Nobody was going to tell me it's a phase. Uh, it was
Things
just,
were very
I'm an
different.
adult and this is my life.
Yeah.
And it was easier for me to say, "Okay, get on board or not."
Yeah.
And
And I'm okay
some
either
people
way.
walked away and some people stayed with me.
Yeah.
And okay. I didn't come out to my parents for a couple of years. I did. I came out to my sister Patty after my
Mm.
freshman year at college, and the first thing she said was, "Okay, who can we tell?" So we strategized, like who could she tell in the family that we knew it wasn't going to get back to mom and dad until I was
Mm.
ready. So we drew the line and we figured out and that was what a gift too, because
Yeah.
I didn't have to have 10,000 conversations, and she was both communicating it and being my advocate and being my ally in the moment. And that was powerful, that was beautiful.
What
And I
a
was ready
wonderful
for it
young heart.
when it happened, when it all happened. I was ready for it. There are people who are outed when they're not ready, and there are
Mhm.
people who come out because they think it's the thing to do, but
Mhm.
then they find themselves in an unsafe, place, unsafe situation. And I was, I think my timing was really lucky.
Mm. Well, back in the 90s too, it was not as readily accepted as it is today. Not that it's
Hmm.
readily accepted, but certainly significantly more so than it was during our high school years. Can I ask how old you are?
Uh, how old am I? 49.
49. Okay, yeah, I'm 47, so we're right around
We're
that
of the
same.
generation. Yeah.
Yeah. It was very, very different, especially for the boys. It was
Hmm.
different even for girls, but definitely for boys.
Yeah. It was a period. It was a period. I remember when I got to college, even by the time I was like a sophomore or junior, I could count on two hands how many people were out on campus. Like that's extraordinary to think about.
Mm.
Um, I went back to my undergrad for it was kind of a reunion. It was celebrating the retirement of my choral conductor,
Mm.
who was legendary, and so a whole bunch of us that we all sang together. So it was basically our reunion.
Mhm.
Um, and my friend Allison and I, we both came out as soon as we got to college, and so we were kind of each other's, we were our own little, queer support group for a long time, and to go back onto campus and to not, and we went to a Jesuit school, a Catholic school, but to see now, giant ass pride flag in the middle of the student center, and the diversity programming has lots of attention to resources for queer students, and it just, oh, what a difference. Like what a difference in, what is that, 25, 30 years. Like
Yeah.
when when I was a freshman, uh the fledgling, Gay Straight Alliance,
Hmm.
sponsored a thing called Gay Jeans Day, and all you had to do was wear jeans to say that you were supportive of your gay friends and classmates. It was the only day on campus that you saw everybody in khakis. It was fascinating. And
And
I didn't,
heartbreaking. How heartbreaking to see that.
if- I kind of wasn't surprised by it. I was like, well, all right, well, that's not, but my friend Laura, my best friend at the time, and she is a great ally. Um, she was destroyed by it. And I can still remember she was wearing, it was the 90s, right? So she was in a overall, kind of shorts overall,
Mhm.
denim thing. Super cute, very much of its time. But I remember her just destroyed, like just weeping. And she said to me, "I'm so sorry." I'm like, "This isn't on you. I'm not personally offended." Like, and certainly not, it's not your fault. Uh, but it was heartening for me to know that she was taking it so seriously. So to
Mm.
think about Gay Jeans Day in 1994, 1995, when everybody wore khakis on campus that day, and then now we've got the giant ass,
Yeah.
pride flag in the student center. That's growth. It's not perfect.
Progress.
The institution still has work to do. Every
Hmm.
place does to
Yep.
make them really truly inclusive and safe places. But like, wow, what a change. Yeah.
Yeah. Progress. It's a
Hmm.
beautiful thing.
90s, man. What a time.
Good old 90s. I wouldn't go back for nothing.
Except for the music, I wouldn't go
Anything.
back.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, the
There's
music. There was some really good grunge music that came
the
out of
more I
there.
come back to like 1992, 1993, like, wow, what came out in those years? That was amazing. Like
Yeah.
it's music today still is building from that
Yeah.
that burst of creativity. Like, ah,
Yeah.
what a
I
time.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the music kind of fell off the cliff for 10 or 15 years too. I feel like it just went right into the gutter. I digress. Let's talk about publishing. What did you decide on for publishing?
I worked with Peanut Butter Publishers,
Okay.
Peanut Butter Publishing in Seattle. It's a small independent publishing house. I believe it's the oldest independent publishing house in the U.S.
Wow.
In that they work with independent authors, and
Hmm.
um, I had done a workshop about the publishing process, and I had started, I put a book proposal together, and I was trying to put it out to literary agents and publishing houses, and I was just emailing it all over the place, and I got zero responses. And it,
Mm.
it dawned on me that just trying to get a literary agent was going to be a full time. So I don't have time for this. I have to do other
Mhm.
things. Um, and then I was like, well, that could have easily put it on the shelf, and I would never have finished the project. But there I was in the car at Green Lake. I was waiting at a red light at Green Lake, and I was listening to NPR, and a spot came on from a sponsor spot saying Peanut Butter Publishing looking for authors with new works at any stage of the editing process. Dot 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 dot. And I thought, huh, I like peanut butter. Maybe. So went home to, Googled it, looked up, okay, all right, they're legit, they're interesting. So I emailed and said, hey, I heard your ad on NPR. I've got this project. And I thought, okay, maybe in a month or two I'll hear back from them. And within 24 hours, can we get on a call? Like, okay, all right. And then it was happening. So Elliot Wolf is the publisher, and he's really created a wonderful team. I worked with Danielle Harvey as my editor. And she was just a fantastic guide through the whole process. And Ruthie is their administrative assistant who kept everything moving smoothly and was keeping me looped in appropriately, and they set me up with a layout designer,
Mhm.
Amy Gardner, and Amy just did a fantastic job. I loved collaborating with her on that. Um, the cover of my book is actually a photograph taken by my friend Joel. Joel was actually the one who gave me that book by Christian Wyman
Mm.
many years ago, and he's a photographer, an artist, and a queer educator. And so I reached out to him. I'm like, hey, I'm working on this book. He was like, congratulations, thanks. Do you have any photos that might fit the cover? And so we talked about what it was about. He sent me a few options, and the first one he sent me was the one that landed on the
Is that it
cover.
behind
It
you?
just yeah,
Can
the
you show us?
yeah. So I hope you can see that
Great.
clearly.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah. We can see it.
so the photograph, he was just walking down the street in New York and saw this just mess on the sidewalk, but he thought it was so beautiful and took
Yeah.
these photos. When I saw that, I thought, oh, I feel like I'm sitting in that chair, with the mess of my life swirling behind me, and
Yeah.
I'm just kind of looking out at the world. And I'm not looking at the mess. I'm looking out at the world and trying to figure out what's going on. And it was like, isn't that what I was trying to do in this book? And so the picture really grabbed me.
Perfect.
But he's a great photographer. So that was also a treat in the publishing process. Just you get to do things like you pick the
Yeah.
color of your book, you get to pick the cover image,
Yeah.
and the advantage of independent publishing is that it's all mine. It's
Mm.
not I'm borrowing the book from a publishing house that I've given my work to. It's all
Right.
mine, and it's all my responsibility to
Mm.
to promote and to do good with. So it's been a really interesting process. I was really grateful that I literally stumbled into peanut butter publishing
The
and the
universe
support that they were
speaks.
able to give, and right, the universe brought me to the right spot at the right time.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were able to keep all of your creative authority, and
Hmm.
that's excellent. I hear
And
horror
even that,
stories.
my editor was really good with pushing back when she needed to push back.
Mm.
She would say, "This is your book, so you make the final call." But
Yeah.
she'd be really, and I trusted, very quickly uh, really trusted Danielle and her
Mm.
instincts, and she understood what I was trying to do. Uh, and when you have that trust in the people that you're collaborating with, I think even if I was working in a more traditional format, working for a publishing house, and once I could trust my editor.
Mm.
Great. Like I want the feedback. I want the criticism. I want the support and the praise. Oh, but only when it's deserved, when it's earned.
Right.
And that was a really I hadn't gotten that kind of feedback since I was in grad school. So it was kind of I feel like I was back in a writing seminar or something with my own personal tutor along the way. It was great. Yeah.
Right. It filled what you were missing from all that education that you're no longer
Right.
partaking
I
in.
I joke sometimes like, every 7 to 10 years I need to go back to grad school. And this would
Right.
be about the time that I would have been like, oh, I think I need another degree. And like, no, I think the book totally absorbed all that energy.
So have you received any feedback from people who have read your book?
I've gotten really beautiful feedback. I'm really grateful. Uh, the first person to read it, my sister Patty,
Mm.
said, "I thought I knew you well, and I feel like I'm just scratching the surface." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting." So I felt like that was someone who knows me really well, and still said I had something to say, that I
Mm.
still surprised her. So that felt good. And I've been hearing that from people. I've gotten, former students have reached out with,
Mm.
and actually one of my former students wrote a review on Amazon that is like so gushing, and I was like, oh my
Mm.
God. But I've also gotten, strangers who have responded to it, have really resonated with, I think the way that I navigate grief in the book. I'm never really talking about just grief, it's always a balance of things. Nothing, and also when there are funny stories, it's not just funny stories. It's also like, here's a funny thing that happened. Now here's how that shaped me.
Mm.
I think people have responded positively to that. I've been grateful for that. One piece of criticism I got, and I knew it was coming, was that I'm a little indulgent with ideas and my little philosophical, insights. But that was also, I wasn't trying to just do a memoir or a piece of philosophy or a piece of
Right.
theology, or it was sort of a little bit of everything. And it was my chance to, if I'm going to say it, I'm going to say it. And
Mm.
I'm glad that they noticed it, whether they agreed or didn't like how I said it, but I'm glad that they noticed it. So,
Because it was intentional.
yeah,
Good.
yeah. But
Good.
the feedback has been very positive so far.
Good.
Yeah, I've been really grateful.
What do you want readers to take away?
My goal was never to just share my life, share my story. It's not about me. Okay, it's all about me, but it's not really about me. It's I I want to demonstrate that it's worth the time to reflect. It's worth the
Mhm.
time to put our experiences and our relationships on the examining table. Like it's worth
Mhm.
it because that's the only way that we can unpack and see, well, what do I want to hold on to and what do I need to let go of?
Mhm.
That was an incredibly um, a beautiful outcome for me in the whole process. It really helped me figure out what do I want to let go of? What do I want to hold on to? Who do I want to become? What direction am I going? I I wanted to demonstrate to people it's worth asking those questions. They're scary questions. They're big questions. They take time.
Mhm.
Reflection, really good reflection takes time,
Mhm.
but it can also be incredibly transformative
Right.
and energizing and
Right.
empowering. Uh, I didn't expect to be so empowered when I got to the other side of the book, but I really feel much more confident in
Yeah.
my perspective on the world and the direction that I'm going. Uh, and I wish that for everybody.
Mm, that's what I think it's about. And I just want to say again, bravo to you for really taking in everything that writing a memoir has to offer. I think
Mm,
this you are the poster child of exactly why I think it's so important from the author side. I mean, obviously it's so important from the reader side for different reasons, but um being able to allow it to transform you and to
mm,
heal you and to recognize that was what was happening and be grateful for it. Not everybody's capable of that. Some people just get the words out so that they get their story out, and I don't know that they really get from it everything that they could. You know what I
mm.
mean?
And not everybody has those tools. They don't have
True.
the process or the method at their
Hmm.
fingertips.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Because of how I grew up and the things that I
Mm-hmm.
taught, like I was exposed to lots of different methods of reflection.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that at school, at family, different experiences. But been able to use them and to tap into them, and
Mm-hmm.
not everybody has those tools at their fingertips.
True.
Reflection is
True.
so undervalued as a
Yeah.
skill.
Mm-hmm.
We think critical thinking, but it's got to be productive. Critical
Mm-hmm.
thinking is great as long as it's going to make somebody money. Uh, Whereas for me, critical thinking is great because it gets us into a space of authenticity and
Yeah.
honesty and truth, and that's where the good stuff happens.
Yeah. I
Um,
agree.
so I hope that maybe somebody might read this book and think, oh yeah, I can do this. I can do this better than he can. I'm going to write my
Yeah.
own book. Great.
Do
Do
it.
it. Take these tools. Like,
Yeah.
I will cheer you on. I
Yeah.
want to help you. Like, yeah, I want, it's not that there's a specific takeaway from my book. It's more,
Mm.
I want people to feel empowered to tell their own story.
Mm. Good. Where can people find you? And did I hear you say you're working on a new book?
I am. I am. The next book. Woo, that's so weird to say.
You're a writer.
I'm a writer. How about that? Wild. The next book is going to be about weddings. So my work now is primarily in ritual design, and most of the
Mhm.
work that I do is wedding ceremonies. So
Mhm.
I work with couples who don't have a tradition to draw on, and we develop a ceremony that centers them. Their experiences, their relationship, their values, their experiences. Everything should resonate with that. And the starting point for me for designing a ceremony is the vows. If you go to the bookstore and you go to the wedding planning, it's all event planning guides.
Yeah.
They have different bells and whistles, but it's event planning.
Yeah.
It's not really wedding planning. So that's what I want to offer is a different approach to planning a wedding that starts with the vows and grows out from there, not
Hmm.
starting with booking a hall, getting a dress, and and hiring a DJ.
I love
Uh,
it.
no, the starting point has to be, for
The
me, the starting
commitment.
point is the ceremony, and
Right.
it doesn't have to be big, it doesn't have to be elaborate, it just has to be authentic, and
Hmm.
that's the goal of the book is to I'm trying to put into condensed pages like, hey, here's my approach, and I hope it's useful for you too. Information about that book will be forthcoming on my website,
Oh,
billhulseman.com. You can get all other information about me and links to buy the book at a variety of outlets. Bookshop.org if you want to buy it through your independent bookstore or a
yep.
local bookseller. Amazon, Allstora, Barnes& and Noble. All those links are on my website. You can also sign up for my newsletter. That comes out weekly-ish these days. I also offer guided meditations on Tuesday afternoons. So
Oh, how
that's
great.
free and via Zoom. And if anyone's looking for a little peace and quiet or trying to figure out how to maintain some sanity in the world that we live in today, yeah, a half hour on Zoom might offer some tools for that.
Yeah.
So everything about the book, everything about me and my work, it's all on billhulseman.com, and I'm also
Great.
active on Bill Hulseman Rituals on Instagram.
Okay. I'll drop those in the show notes too.
Excellent, thanks.
Bill, this has been an absolute joy. You have some of the most beautiful energy of anybody I've ever met. Like, I just love how you take every situation and turn it around into something positive and good for your life. We need more. We need more Bill Hulsmans in this world. So I thank you so much for that.
Thank you. That's very kind.
I'm sure we'll be in touch in the future. I would love to hear more about your next book. Until then,
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Aaron. This was a lot of fun.
thanks. It was. Take care.
You too.
That's it for today's episode of For Love of Memoir. Thanks for listening. If something in this conversation moved you, I'd be so grateful if you'd follow the show, leave a comment, or share it with someone you care about. Those small actions tell the algorithm that our content matters so we can reach more memoir lovers like you. It's a free and simple way to support the show and the authors we feature. You can find links to today's guest and their book in the show notes. Until next time, take care and keep writing your story.